It's me, Aubrey, and I am going to walk us through our photo restoration project. Lightroom is good for simple edits. Here, we're going to restore an image, so we're going to be needing a program with a little bit more power. So we're going to use Photoshop. There are multiple ways to open up an image. So when I'm working on my computer and on my own personal projects, the things that I'd like to work on, I keep them on the desktop. When I'm all done with them, then I move them off to my external hard drive or wherever I store my stuff. But while I'm working on things, I like to work on them on the desktop. So one of the ways I can open it is click and drag it down into my Photoshop icon if I'm on an Apple computer, and the image pops up. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this to show you another way. If you are not on an Apple computer and you just want to open up the good old-fashioned way, all you have to do is start up Photoshop and you can hit open and find it, but normally you'll see your recent images on the desktop there, and there is photo restoration, and I'm going to open that up. All right, so I'm going to try to teach you some good habits. I'll be honest, I'm not always doing good habits, but hopefully I can help us break some of those bad habits. First things first, we want to make sure that we make a duplicate copy of our layer. So there's lots of different ways to do it. I'm just going to help you start learning some hotkeys. So we're going to go with Command A, that selects all, Command C, that copies, and Shift Command V is copy into place. So now I have my one image here and my duplicate here. In Photoshop, there are multiple ways to do everything. Right now in this lesson, I'm trying to show you some hotkey tools or hotkey notes and get comfortable switching back and forth with tools. For the most part, I'm manually going to go and click on these images here and these words to get to the things I need, and every now and then I'll throw in some hotkeys. If you already know your hotkeys, by all means do it, and if you're new to it, I'm going to start you off with some easy ones to use and love. So, second thing we need to do is make sure we're labeling things. So this file here, I'm going to call Orig Baby, as in original baby. This one here, I'm going to go ahead and lock it. And that means I can't really do anything to it. But I'm also going to turn it off because I just want to have it there just in case something goes horribly wrong and I need to get back to the original file. Whenever you're dealing with a file, you should always make a copy of it so you have the original of what you started with before you start playing too far in on things. Next part, I'm going to go ahead and label this Edit Baby. And I'm going to go ahead and start working on that. Up here in this area, I have some masks that are going to deal with adjustments. In theory, like I said, there's multiple ways to do everything in Photoshop. In this particular lesson, as I'm showing you these tools, and masking sometimes gets a little hectic, I don't want you to worry about it. If you already know how to mask, great, but we'll get to masking a little bit later, and we're going to use these different tools over here. All right, so when you're dealing with a photo edit and dealing with a restoration, your goal is to make the image look good. It doesn't have to look exactly like it originally did. And what I mean by that is you want to think practically on this. So we were given this image that has tape on the corner. It started to stain. I don't think it was sepia toned, but it kind of has a nice little color to it. But then we have all these other stains, chemical stains that are happening, a torn piece here with the tape and, acid marks from the glue from the tape. We have a torn corner here. There's a lot of things we can do. We don't need to recreate this edge of the paper of the photo. We can just give it a nice clean edit and make it look good. Our focal point also is not all this information. The whole focal point is really having to deal with the baby in the tub. There are some things we can fix, and then there's some flaws we can't. This baby actually is a little bit out of focus, but we can really help make it draw the eye into the image and make it a successful image and a successful restoration image. This requires a lot of critical thinking and creative thinking. So you need to decide what is the problem you're trying to solve with this image. So First of all, I want it to be a printable image, and I need to make a nice version of this black and white image with the baby as the focal point. That's the problem I'm trying to solve. So this is me trying to solve it and giving you some pointers on how to do it. It is up to you on how you would like to do it, but this is how I'm going to go about. So the first things first, I've labeled those layers. I want to make sure I'm focusing on what's important. So this was a black and white image. I later on might decide that I want to make this a sepia tone image. But right now as I'm editing, I don't need that color. That color is just a distraction. So I'm going to go and change it. I went into image, adjustments to desaturate to make it a black and white image. Now, if I was truly working on this to make it a clean black and white image, we would play with levels, and later on, we'll probably get to that area. But right now, I just want to see what is it that I need to correct, and then I can deal with levels and curves of the image. So I've made it black and white. It already kind of looks better, don't you think? All right, so over here, we know our tools for the most part. So we have our move tool and our rectangular marquee tool. If I click on that and hold it down, it will change into a circular. You have your lasso tool to select certain parts, and you also have the magic wand tool. We're gonna go play in the crop tool right now, and it's going around the edge of this image. I'm going to click and bring this up to the actual edge of the photograph, not just the paper. So I'm going to crop like that. Bring this in a little bit. That looks like a pretty clean line. I might bring this in just a bit. Yeah, looks good. And then I'm just going to double click on the image and I have it cropped. I can see where there's a little bit of the white of the edge there, and I can fix that later on, but it just is to try to help us set this up a little bit better. So we have these two Band-Aids here. One of the Band-Aids is the spot healing brush, and the other one is the healing brush. The spot healing brush is the computer trying to figure out what is the spot that needs to be healed. And basically I can color over something, and the computer is going to look at pixels nearby to see what it probably thinks it should be. And this brush is brilliant when it's working, and then it's a pain when it's not. And it's a matter of trial and error. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Right now, like I said, I'm going to select on these so you can see where these tools are. Eventually, I'll start using the hotkeys, so then you can get used to it. So I'm going to switch back over to my spot healing. And you can see how it just cleans this up very nicely. Now, hotkey time, when I'm working with something that requires a brush, I like to use the bracket. Right now, I'm drawing with a stylus, and you can do this with a mouse. It's kind of tedious with a mouse, but some sort of tablet will help you. My right hand, because I am right-handed, is on the tablet, and I'm drawing, and well, I'm scribbling, to be honest, and my left hand has two fingers on the bracket. So I have a spot there that the computer didn't know quite what to do with. And that looks all right for now. And I'll show you how to fix some of this up a little bit nicer without the healing brush. Right now, we're just trying to take care of some of those big black and white spots that aren't supposed to be there. So I'm fixing up some spots. I'm just moving around, looking at some of these spots here. Go ahead and close that. All right, so I've been doing some spot healing here. So I'll show you the before and after. You can see that I've got quite a few spots taken care of. And that's just using that one brush. Now we have a couple of spots in here that we're going to need to take care of, and I want to handle those a little bit differently. There are multiple ways of doing all of these things. So we're going to go through here. And we're going to go ahead and use the healing brush tool instead of the spot healing. Well, we'll see what the computer says on this spot. This particular spot, as I color over it, it did pretty good fixing that in. And I just wanted to make sure that I had um, a good amount in there that would work. So good job there. All right, this part here, it's gonna be a little bit messier. I'm gonna go ahead and spot heal and see how it works. It's doing an all right job, but you can tell that the image and the actual bathtub has some cracks in it, and the computer doesn't know quite how to read it. So there's lots of different ways we can fix this, but it depends on what is it that we really want to work on. Is it really important that we see all the cracks from the bathtub on there? Is that the focal point, or is there something else we can do? So here you can see the healing brush is, the spot healing brush is not quite figuring out what we want to do. So we're going to switch over to the regular healing brush, and I'm going to say, hey, pay attention to this section right here. You can see I have the crosshairs, and it's going to try to help make that a little nicer. It's not like the clone stamp where it's trying to make it perfect and the exact same pixels there. It's kind of blending it out to get a better idea. So how do I get that to happen? While I'm selecting, or while my stylus is hovering over the tablet, I am selecting the option and it turns into this crosshairs, and I can then select the spot that I'd like and tell it to match that. When it doesn't do it the way that I'd like, I Command Z and go back. Now on this particular thing, I am just doing this rather quickly so that we can have an idea of how these tools work. So I would honestly, if I was doing this for a client, be a little bit more careful. But my client is you guys, and learning how to use these tools is where we're going for. So when I go to grade this, I'm not going to look for every little pixel to be perfect. I just want to see, do you understand how to make these tools work and make it work in your favor? So once again, I had these spots here that it wasn't working really nice. So I'm going to tell the computer, pay attention to that corner up there and mimic. It doesn't have to be perfect for right now, and I'll show you why in just a bit. But I just want to get some of those heavy scratches out of there. So there we have it. Let's look before, after. Looks much better. Now, there's some things we can do to make it even better, and I'm going to show you how to do those things. So I'm ready to fix up the bathtub. And with the bathtub, there's some parts where the glaze has started to crack, and also the photograph has started to crack, and I can't really tell what parts are what, and I just want to kind of clean up this grittiness a little bit. I also have this corner over here I want to fix, and just try to make this a little bit of a nicer composition. So first things first is I'm going to create a new layer. And I am going to go to my paintbrush, and I'm going to hit the option button, and it will let me match to a color. And I'm just going to color on it with good old-fashioned paint. And every now and then, I might pick another color to play with, and I'm going to blend this out. Right now, it looks like I'm just painting on top of it, correct? And that's fine and all, but it isn't going to make it feel like a actual photograph. And so we want to fix this up. So my favorite filter is Gaussian blur, and I'm going to blur this out a bit so that it blends out. And I want to have some of those imperfections. I want to make sure it still feels a little realistic. It is an old bathtub, but I just want to make it not so intense. So I'm going to blur this a bit. And then I'm going to go through with the eraser. I need a much smaller eraser, and just clean those edges up where it blurred out a little bit more. And this seems like such a simple idea, but it really matters on how you're thinking about your problem that you're trying to solve. And sometimes when you think, oh, this image needs so much work, it might, but you then need to start thinking about how would you problem solve it. So just that subtlety there, I can see I have a little bit of white off on the side here to erase, but it just makes it a little bit nicer. I might even bring down the opacity a bit, and it's just that subtlety really makes a difference. So it still feels like that. Here's something I want to show you, and this isn't a photo class, so it's something not to worry about, but the way that this bathtub is sitting right at the edge of where the print is, that's not good composition. It either needs to be cropped a little bit more so it feels more intentional, or I need to rebuild all this stuff here. So for the sake of this project, I think I'm going to crop it. So I'm going to use my original edit, and I'm going to go ahead and select the crop tool. I'm going to go ahead and Command 0 so I can see all of my image, and I'm going to bring this up just a bit so it feels more intentional on that crop. It just seems like even if I rebuild it, well, spoiler alert, I've rebuilt it, and it's just an odd spot for it. You might as well bring it up, and it gives you a little bit more, a little bit less to deal with, and a little bit more of that focal point on what's important. So in this spot here, there's a lot of negative space. I would probably crop it. I'm gonna leave it here because I'm gonna show you how to fix that corner. But down there, that line was just driving me nuts, and I wanted to show you how you could fix it without having to rebuild as much tape over there. So you can see that looks a lot nicer. All right, so we have it cropped. Now I'm going to go ahead and clean up this corner here, and I have less editing to do, and the image looks a little bit nicer. So now I have this giant corner here that I bet you've all been wondering how I'm going to fix. This is where I win you over with my Photoshop skills. So what I'm going to do is go to the marquee, the rectangular marquee, and I'm going to draw a box, a nice rectangle box. That looks good. And I'm going to hit copy, and I'm going to hit Shift Command V. All right, so now I'm going to hit Command T, which is free transform. And what I can do, I'm going to hold the Shift key down while I move this, and it makes it kind of snap into place. You can see how it's a little jerky in the way that I move it. And I'm going to make sure it's staying with that edge, but I'm going to put it right there. Next part is I'm going to stretch this out, where I work so hard on telling you not to stretch your type and things like that. But right now, we're going to stretch this here. I'm going to double click, and I have a giant patch that feels like a patch. It's nice that this lines up, and you'll notice that I made this patch to be pretty large. It covers up quite more than I need. I'm going to go ahead and label that patch. And I have this patch, and it doesn't match completely, but it does cover up that spot. So what I'm going to do next is go to my eraser, and with my eraser, I want to make sure that my hardness is down to 0. And I'm going to make my brush nice and big so it feathers out those edges. Oop, I feathered a little too much on that lag. Still see it. So I'm going to feather this out. Use a little bit of a smaller brush over here. There we go. And so I don't have that very sharp corner patch, but the color is not great there. So now we're going to go to image, adjustments, and we're going to play with levels. This level means the darkest darks, mid-range, and your lightest lights. And you can see how this image is pretty much, or this section is just right here. And I am going to play in my mid-range and see if I can get that to match up pretty nicely. There we go. I like how that looks. And you can see how I have this nice patch that works there. I can erase more if I want, but I want it to blend in where it feels more organic than a straight line. So there we have that patch. I could go through and adjust it more, but you guys see the magic of it, all right? All right, so far so good. The last thing I'm gonna show you, these guys, I'm gonna keep them there. I'm going to actually select these 3 layers, and I'm going to say merge layers. So they all become one image. What I'm going to do is make a copy of this layer, and then we're going to create a false depth of field. So first I'm going to label this depth, and I am going to erase the baby. So as some of you have those new fancier smartphones, this is kind of the same technology they're using. It's the same concept, I should say, of drawing your eye into what is important. So even though this is an old image, it's an old image with a baby out of focus. So I am going to first erase the baby, and then I'm going to give you a little bit more of a pointer of how to do this. We're also going to erase part of the bathtub. So this is what's really showcasing that it's closer to us. So we'll do like right there, this line here. So I've erased on my depth layer where the baby is, and in theory, where the image should be, giving that illusion of depth of field. I'm going to turn back and forth, turn this on and off. And I'm not worried about it being perfect right now. It's just going to be a little bit of depth added to the image. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to hit Gaussian blur. Now I'm going to do this right now with it off, just so you can see how this tool works. So Gaussian blur basically blurs out all the pixels. It's remembering the last time I used the Gaussian blur, which was on the bathtub. And I'm going to bring down its radius to be not that big, just enough that this feels out of focus. But we want to make it so we can see the shapes and all the imperfections of the images that we didn't take care of kind of blur away. Now, here's the image with that layer off and on. It makes the baby stand out a little bit more. It also makes you notice how the baby's out of focus, and this is actually where the photo is in focus, but it brings your eye closer in on our little friend here. So it's a nice little way to just kind of help bring the focus in on what's important and what's not. So I played with the opacity to bring that down a little bit, and I like where we're going with it, but we still need to do some things with it. In this particular image, I'm going to just keep working on these until I get it the way that I like. I can go back into my history and I can do save as if this was something I was doing for not just a homework assignment, but for a client. Right now, I'm just showing you different ways to deal with our image. So I'm going to go ahead and select the bath fix. And we're going to go over here in that mask area that I was talking about. So you have brightness and contrast, you have levels, and you have curves and exposures and all the things that we talked about last class. What I want to play with is either levels and curves. For me, I personally like to play with levels when I'm dealing with a black and white image, and I like to play with curves when I'm dealing with a color image. It is entirely up to you. This histogram is telling me that there aren't any true whites, and when I get to the whites, you can see it's mostly that bathtub. So I'm just going to kind of adjust a little bit to try to bring up some contrast. I like where that's going. And you can see it's created a mask layer right in between the depth and the baby fix. There, I put it on top, and now you can see it's affecting all the layers that are being shown. When I have it this way, it's really just affecting the one. It's truly up to you on which one you want to do. All right, so the baby is a little bit more in focus. One thing that we can do that's a really nice trick is also create a vignette. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. I am going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to call it Vin, just so I know what it is. I'm going to go ahead and pick one of the darkest grays, which is pretty close to black, but not quite. And I am going to color. Just kind of focus this in, frame this up. And then I'm going to go to my favorite filter, and I'm going to blur it out a lot. I'm going to blur it a lot where it's going to be on top of the baby a little bit, but then I'm going to go back with the eraser and try to help it out. So you can play with how much you'd like. I think that's pretty good. And then I'm going to play with the opacity, so it's not so intense, but now it feels like our focal point is right here on the baby. I'm going to go through with my eraser, make sure none of it really hit the baby. Maybe whiten up a little bit of the bathtub, give it a little bit of a more of a depth and a shadow there. And yeah, this image is looking pretty nice. So going back to what it originally looked like, I'll turn these layers off. That's what we started off with. And that's what we have now. When you're doing an image, you should save as often. So as you're working and you think it's going good, you should do a save as. So baby 1, baby 2, baby 3, but you want to make sure you're saving often. For this, it's a quick video that I was just showing you how to do. So I am all set with this. I'm going to flatten, well, I'm going to save it the proper way first with some of its layers. So I'm going to do a save as. And in Adobe Creative Cloud, they're going to ask if you want to save in the cloud. I'm going to just save it on the computer, and then later on I can move it over. So this is going to be your homework assignment. Multiple people will be turning in this baby as a homework assignment. So make sure you put your name in it so I know which baby is yours. So Aubrey Rogers _ photo restoration.psd. And I will go ahead and save that and hit OK. Now, when you turn in your assignments in Photoshop, you're going to turn it in like you would turn it in for a client. They're not going to necessarily have Photoshop. They just want the JPEG of this great grandfather that they have. So we need to make it into a format that they can open. So we're going to go ahead and flatten this image, and we're going to do a file save as. And this time, I'm going to mark don't show again and save on the computer. And where it says PSD, we're going to switch this over to be a JPEG. Mostly everything can read a JPEG. This way you can showcase what you've done. All right. And so when you get that, you get this window box of options. We want the quality to be the maximum. We want it to be a smart, large file. And we also want to optimize the baseline. That's just giving you the nicest version of a JPEG as you can. A JPEG, remember, is where the computer compresses all that information to make it not as large of a file as, say, a TIFF file or a RAW file. All right. I hope this video helped. I'll talk to you later.